The morning I walked into the office, 8 minutes late, was the same morning everything quietly began to fall into place. Not because I had planned anything, and not because I suddenly decided to change my life. It started with something small, something most people wouldn't even remember by lunchtime. I had given away my sandwich. He was sitting on the back steps of the building, shoulders slumped, staring at a dented thermos like it had personally betrayed him. His clothes were worn hands rough. The kind of person you pass every day without ever really seeing. I almost walked past him, too. Almost. But something about the way he sat there, like the weight of everything had settled into his bones, made me stop. I handed him the paper bag without saying much. He looked up, surprised, studied my face for a second, then nodded once. No thank you, no conversation, just acknowledgement. It felt enough. Then I walked inside and straight into Carl's temper. Carl didn't care about reasons to him being late wasn't a moment. It was a character flaw. By the time we reached the elevator, he had already turned my 8 minutes into a speech about professionalism image and how I somehow reflected poorly on him. Everything always reflected on Carl. I'd worked under him for 6 years, long enough to understand the pattern. He took credit for anything that went right and assigned blame for anything that didn't. My job existed somewhere in the shadows of his title. I fixed reports, corrected numbers, rewrote emails, and quietly held systems together while he stood in front of rooms talking about leadership. If you asked anyone else, they'd say he ran the department. If you asked the truth, it would say something different. We entered the boardroom late, and that kind of lateness carries weight. Conversations paused, eyes shifted. Carl launched into his usual performance without missing a beat, throwing out polished phrases like they meant something on their own. I barely heard him because at the head of the table sat the man from the back steps. No worn clothes now, no broken thermos, just a dark suit, composed posture, and a presence that silenced the room without effort. When our eyes met, recognition passed between us. Quiet, unmistakable. A moment later, the announcement landed. He was the new CEO. Carl didn't notice the shift right away. He kept talking, weaving through his rehearsed presentation like nothing had changed, but everything the room had gone still in a way that wasn't supportive. It was observant. The new CEO listened without interruption. That was the first sign something was different. Over the next hour, Carl talked himself into a corner. He used the same language he always used. Broad, confident, empty. Normally, it worked. People didn't challenge him. They didn't ask for specifics. They let the performance pass. But this time when he finished, the CEO simply placed a document on the table and asked a question. What does your role actually accomplish? It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive, but it cut through everything. Carl tried to answer. He talked about oversight, leadership, coordination. The same vague ideas dressed in slightly different words. The CEO listened, then asked again, calm, precise. What function would stop if you weren't here? No one moved. No one helped. For the first time since I'd known him, Carl didn't have an answer. And just like that, the illusion cracked. The audit began the next morning. Officially, it was routine. Internally, it was anything but requests started flowing. Expense reports, time logs, vendor records, the kind of details Carl had always dismissed as minor beneath his attention. But I had never treated them that way. My records were complete, organized, verified. Every discrepancy I had flagged, every override he had made, every decision documented in clean, time-stamped trails. I hadn't kept them for revenge. Elle had kept them because accuracy mattered. Now, accuracy mattered to everyone else, too. Carl approached me by midday, trying to sound casual, but panic leaked through every word. He asked questions that weren't really questions, probing, searching for reassurance I wasn't going to give. I answered simply, factually nothing more. By the end of the week, the tone of the office had shifted. People who barely acknowledged me before were suddenly attentive. Conversations paused when I walked by. Compliments appeared where silence used to live. It wasn't respect. It was awareness. They were beginning to understand something Carl never had. That the quiet work mattered more than the loud credit. The email from the CEO came late that afternoon. Short, direct. He asked for a transition outline, what needed to continue and what would break without proper handling. No pressure, just clarity. I wrote it that night, not emotionally, not defensively, just truth. Roles, responsibilities, dependencies, the reality of how the department actually functioned, not how it was presented. When I finished, I realized something. For years, I had been holding everything together, and no one had been looking. The following Monday, the office stopped pretending. Finance escalated their findings. Legal stepped in. Meetings shifted. Carl's authority did not disappear all at once. It thinned out like something hollow being exposed. He tried to regain control, tried to redirect attention, tried to involve me in his explanations, but the facts did not bend. The final conversation between us happened the night before everything ended. He came to my desk, not as a manager, but as someone trying to hold on to something already slipping away. He talked about teamwork, shared effort, history. He asked me to support him, to validate him. I listened. Then I told him the truth. I had supported him for years, quietly, consistently, without recognition. I had done the work he presented as his own. I had protected the department when his decisions created risk. And he had never noticed. That was the difference. The next morning, he walked out of the building with security. No scene, no shouting, just silence. People watched, but no one spoke. I saw him look in my direction once, not with anger, but something closer to realization, as if too late. He understood exactly where everything had gone wrong. I did not respond. Some things do not need acknowledgement. Inside a glass-walled room, I sat across from the CEO, reviewing transition plans. He arrived shortly after Carl left, calm as ever, like everything was unfolding exactly as expected. We started working immediately. No speeches, no celebration, just decisions. He handed me access systems, approvals, responsibilities that had always been just out of reach. Not as a reward, but as recognition of what had already been happening. The work did not change. Only the visibility did. A week later, I sat in the same office Carl used to occupy. It did not feel like a victory. It felt like alignment, like something finally placed where it belonged. The tension was gone. The constant correction, the second guessing, the quiet frustration it had all lifted. The work was still complex, still demanding, but it was honest now. One afternoon, I placed a simple paper bag on the conference table before the CEO arrived. Inside was a sandwich. Nothing special, just something prepared with the same care as before. When he walked in, he paused for a moment, then smiled, genuine, unguarded. "You remember details," he said. "I always have," I replied, and that was the difference. Not power, not titles, attention, recognition. The things that had been invisible before were now clear. I was not louder then.